Hi, everybody. You are very welcome back to a very special episode of the Irish NFL Show. We are relooking with the Arrowheads Abroad on how it went over the weekend. I'm so excited. Colum, you were back. You were jet lagged. It's great to see you again and not actually looking at you through my phone, totally green and envious of where you were.
Yeah, obviously just arrived back in this morning after a great week, but probably not quite as good a week as our guest had.
I love the way
Yeah,
he's sitting there and he's like still glowing. Chris, I'm so happy that you guys joined us. So thank you so
thank you.
much. It
Thank you for
was
having us.
an amazing game. I'm actually slightly annoyed I didn't come in to see you guys in the woolshed because wow.
Yeah, yeah, it was. I've got a bit of a confession to make. Personally, I wasn't able to make it to Dublin. A little bit of an issue with the passport and certain travel operator wanting to see one and certain operators not wanting to see one. So at the finish, I had to abandon those plans and make other plans for later in the year. But yeah, it was. From what I've heard with the guys and from what my experience was of watching the game at home as well, it was an absolutely fantastic game that just didn't disappoint. It was the first, it was billed at the Kelsey Bowl. It was billed as the first meeting of two black quarterbacks in the Super Bowl. It was quite an historic night. So, and it was just one of those, you knew it was going to be a good game. You knew it was going to be a tough game. Um, we knew from the outset, and it didn't disappoint whatsoever. It was high scoring. It had everything, pretty much everything you wanted. Bit of injury controversy. Willie Warney at halftime. Can he do it? Can he not? So yeah, it was excellent. It didn't disappoint whatsoever.
That magical sponge done wonders at halftime. And I also want whatever Mahomes took for that high injury sprain for when I've got a hangover because wow, the game really was a battle of the quarterbacks. Colin, what was it like being in the stadium at the time?
It was great. I mean, great atmosphere. It felt probably that it was maybe 50, 55, 45 Eagles fans. I would say the Eagles fans just edged it in terms of attendance, but given they hadn't been there in longer, that isn't an enormous surprise also given the size of Philadelphia. But Chris, I'm interested in hearing from you in terms of the start of the game and the decision by Andy Reid to give the Eagles the ball, because I was kind of baffled by this. I mean, they're notorious for starting early and getting up ahead of steam. Was that a surprise to you?
It wasn't personally because if watching the Chiefs for so long, everybody knows that if the Chiefs win the toss, Andy Reid likes to defer and receive the ball at the start of the second half. He likes to go finish the end of the first half strong, hopefully get some points on the board at the end of the second half, get the ball straight back at the start of the second half and try and double up on that. So it didn't surprise me. A little bit, I suppose. I can understand why it might surprise other people that the Eagles that do start, they come out like a train. I think it was just a case of Andy Reid sticking to his game plan, sticking to what he always does, and hoping and putting his faith in the defense that they would create some kind of stop. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I think it was more a case of sticking to his own game plan and knowing what it is that he would normally do. So it didn't surprise me.
And did you have any the concern? I suppose they did start off so well, and I mean, just about everything that the Eagles wanted to happen on that drive kind of did, right? Jalen Hurts showed that the shoulder wasn't an issue. They
Yeah.
were able to move the ball quite effectively, and then when it came down to the goal line, the Chiefs bring in the really big boys, but the Eagles do what the Eagles always seem to do on those short yardage, and they force them over. I
Yeah.
mean, at that point, was there a little bit of concern that they were able to move the ball so freely in that first drive?
I'd be lying if I said that there wasn't, because yeah, there was a bit of a concern at first. I thought this was just a bit too easy for them, and I know what they're like. And I thought that was without even bringing kind of Miles Sanders into it. It was pretty much like a couple of yards for Kenny Gainwell. It was mainly Jalen Hurts doing the damage. And then if they get in kind of a third and short situation, it's going to be two down territory, especially in the Super Bowl. There's no way they're going to be giving it up unless it's inside their own 20-yard line, something like that. But they went through. They were moving the chains with ease. I thought that we would be prepared for the run early doors, and that we would kind of probably would be seeing more run plays than passing plays from the outset, first quarter, and kind of pretty much what happened. But I was a little bit I was a bit surprised at how easy we seemed to kind of give up those those yards. But you knew as soon as you got in, like I said, the 3rd and 1 situation or 4th and 1, it was always going to be that kind of QB sneak, or it's going to be that kind of get everybody behind Jalen Hurts, give him a good shove up the backside, and see what extra you can pick up. But all you need is one, and they just did it so efficiently that it frustrated me quite a lot the night. I thought I was getting frustrated, and at times I kind of lost my integrity a little bit, and thinking that you're just the same team that does this same thing over and over again, and it works for you. And if we were able to do that, we would capitalize on it as well. If it works, why don't change it, don't fix it, just keep going with what works for you. So yeah, it frustrated me a little bit, and the thing is, it eats the clock when you're running the ball as well. And the less time, it's clever. The less time you give Patrick Mahomes on the field, the better. You're giving yourself a great chance, and they did that well. Can't complain.
I love how you touched on the quarterback sneak, because it is something that we've seen the whole way through the season. It's Nick Sirianni's little belter he always pulls out of the ball. It's one of these questions. How is it that teams who actually play against them just aren't prepared or completely ready and able to play that and know that when that's going to happen? I understand, it does come out of it. It just seems to be, we always know what's going to happen, and yet we're not equally prepared for it.
No, it's right. You're powerless. You know it's going to happen, but you can't stop it. And I don't think it's even teams not being prepared for it. I think teams are probably over prepared for it. They know that it's going to happen. They pack the box with the heaviest guys they can find, but it doesn't matter. They get so low that you can't generate enough of it. You can't get low yourself. Low man wins in the NFL. You can't get any lower than they get. If you could get that leverage and drive up under the pads, but they can't do that. That dive just it takes half of the big guys out of the equation. They can't do anything about it, and it just leaves a couple of, a little few push from the linebackers. Jalen Hurts, you can either dive over the top, you might find a little gap. He just needs to stick his hand out past the line. It's just, you cannot stop it. I don't know how they're able to do it so well, but they can get so low that other people just can't. They must work on their flexibility drills, something mad, because it's just it's like nobody else. I've never seen a team like it do that.
Well, Chris, speaking of things that are coming and yet you can't stop it, Travis Kelce, because the talk on the morning of the game had been how Vic Fangio had signed a 2-week contract with the Eagles to help them game plan, and everybody knows that Travis Kelce is a Hall of Fame tight end. He's the best tight end in the league, and were you? I mean, look, we know he can do it, but were you surprised that he had so much space, particularly early on? And, it just seemed like Fangio missed 87 on the scouting report.
It looked like it. I was quite surprised with how regular and how easy he was getting open. I wasn't expecting it at all. I think the talk in the previous round was about whether, have you hit Kelce yet, was what they were kind of talking about. If you haven't hit Kelce yet, then what you're doing. I don't think they got the memo. I don't know how he was open so often and how he managed to create so much space, but we all know how he does it. So yeah, I don't know how he managed to do it, but we do know how he does it. He's so good at what he does. It's just chip blocking, and he gets himself in some space. I don't know what the game plan was in terms of defending him, but there's times they were playing with kind of 2 high safeties. It gives up the intermediate. You're going to give yards to Kelce if that's the case, and if it finds a seam with kind of a 10-15 yard gain, it's his game. He gets open. He's such a, I don't think people understand how good of a runner he is, and his ability to get open. I think people are cottoning on more and more now, but again, going like the QB sneak, it doesn't matter. You can't stop him. You know what he's going to do. You just can't stop him. Short of kind of doubling him up with 2 linebackers, if you do that, you're just leaving it open for ball over the top. You've got to make a decision on which way you go with it. You can't do everything, and that's for some reason they decided to not go with having Travis Kelce covered for some reason. But
I'm just surprised that people haven't gone with the double him and take the hit. Like if Juju burns you, if MVS burns you, I think take the hit. But you saw it against the Jags. Chiefs backed up. Obviously, Chad Henne is in. Chiefs backed up into their own end zone. And the Jags gave. I mean, look, Kelce is incredible at finding space, but the fact you don't double him, I'm always amazed, because he is that good. And obviously he has that relationship with Mahomes as well, and their innate ability to kind of find each other. I remember Tua earlier in the season said about like receivers, if you can't see me, I can't see you. Well, that doesn't seem to apply to Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, because Mahomes can be anywhere on the field. He doesn't have to have his eyes on Kelce, and he has that ability to find him. I mean, it just in wider than the Super Bowl, maybe. I mean, for like, is Travis Kelce at like, where do you place him in terms of the great tight ends we have seen, in terms of the Gronks and the others who've come through, the Shannon Sharps and others?
I think it's a tough one, because it's at every position they evolve as time goes on. I think what's required of you, it evolves. I mean, now tight ends a lot more are expected to be kind of a receiving threat, much more than they ever were before. You know, we're kind of seeing more of that kind of additional offensive lineman, where now they're seen more as that, you know, a little bit of a kind of a bigger bodied wide receiver, more of a receiving threat who provides a little bit of a blocking kind of upside. So it's tough, I think, to compare them. It's a little bit like how do you kind of compare like a Mike Tyson to a Muhammad Ali kind of situation? Completely different eras, and it's different ways of kind of playing the game and approaching a fight kind of thing. But for me, the closest I suppose I could probably get would be the Gronk era, and the kind of Tony Gonzalez is about as close as you're going to get in terms of what's required of them. And certainly he's up there with Gronk. I personally, I'll be a bit biased, and I would say that he's better than Gronk. His stats, and they've eclipsed that. Yes, again, like I said, go back to the caveat that some people are probably going to throw up, that more is expected of Kelce as a receiver than was of Gronk. Gronk was more maybe a kind of a red zone target for Tom Brady to exploit. Kelsey's a bit of both. He's a red zone threat, but he's an every down threat receiving the ball as well. So it's very tough to compare everybody, but I certainly, he should be up there in those conversations. One of the top 5, if not top 2 tight ends of all time. I've always been a Chiefs fan for a while, so I've always kind of had a bit of a soft spot for Gonzalez and Kelce. So it's a tough one, but I would say that he's probably up there, certainly top 2.
We all know who Mama Kelsey's favorite boy is now after Sunday, for sure, for the next year anyways. Colum, you were in the stadium. What was it like when Mahomes picked up that injury? Because we've seen what it was like the last time he actually picked up the same injury. And I mean, I almost fell off my sofa watching it here. The scream, I think I probably woke my neighbor. It was just crazy.
Yeah, I think there was a kind of collective intake of breath in the stadium, and everyone kind of wondered how bad it was. And then you saw on the big screens on the sideline, you saw the grimace, and you really wondered, what is this going to mean, and could this be it? And every time they kind of showed a replay, because he was grimacing on the sideline, you thought, they could be really in trouble here. For you, Chris, I suppose, with the injury and the Eagles essentially, dominating the first half in many ways. Obviously there was the fumble return, but they did what they wanted to do in terms of, they kept the ball away from Mahomes, and they managed to score points. Going in at half time, what was your feeling at that point?
I was confident before the game that we were going to win the game. Going into halftime, it was more a case of, I really hope we win the game, because the one thing you've got in your corner is that Patrick Mahomes is a freak. He's like nobody else that's played the game before. I mean, the things he does with the ball is just ridiculous. He finds ways to get the ball to people. He'll find ways to pick up that yardage. It doesn't matter how he does it. He does it. You just can't stop him. But if he doesn't have that platform to throw from, and the fact that he's not going to be able to scramble like he does quite often, such a deceptive runner with the ball in his hands, it worried me quite a bit. I thought it's really going to be tough. And I did think that actually it was going to have to be that our Super Bowl hopes were relying on Chad Henne performing some kind of miracle, and having pretty much the opposite of what the first half was, because the Eagles just they did what they wanted. I mean, we had trouble in the first half. The defensive backs were struggling to contain AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. We just Jalen Hurts was having fun running with the ball. I mean, everything they wanted to do it went in their favor in the first half, I think, and I think it was a bit of a let off with the that fumble recovery. I think it worked. It was good. It was a bonus, but aside from that, everything was just it was terrible. To be honest, it wasn't going according to the script. So second half, it really needed to be the exact opposite of that, and you knew with kind of Patrick Mahomes at the centre of that, you always had a shot of that. I was struggling to think that or believe that he would be back after the halftime. I mean, the grimace and kind of putting his head on the coach's shoulder, looking as though you knew at the start of the game it wouldn't have healed properly. It takes too long to heal. A fortnight off isn't going to heal it completely. You knew he was never going to miss the game. You knew he was going to be starting the game. And he would do his best. But when you saw him hobbling like that, almost dragging his back end off like some kind of gazelle that's been caught by some kind of big cat, dragging its back end away, wounded and limping, it wasn't a good sight. And I feared the worst then. But came out second half, and so at least we're in with a shot.
And I suppose for me, like that first drive of the second half was changed everything, right? There's actual tone change in the stadium. And while I feel the Chiefs were probably more aggressive all night, and you have to set the tone. There was an early hit on Devonta Smith. Now, in fairness, he got up from it and just continued to play. But that to me set the tone, and we've seen that time and time again. But on offense, it didn't feel like you'd gotten going, but all of a sudden Pacheco came out, and my goodness, was he running angry. All of a sudden, Mahomes isn't just looking for Kelsey. He's finding guys, he's running, he's showing he can take off. And that was a kind of a palpable shift in emphasis, and you could feel it in the stadium. It was like, oh no, here they come. And was that the feeling that you had at that point? Was it like, oh, this is on all of a sudden?
It did slowly. The kind of the belief started to creep in a little bit more. It was less of hope and kind of the balance tipped more towards the belief side that we can do this, and that as long as I've seen games so many times where you're trailing in the third quarter and all of a sudden there's an enormous fourth quarter and you win the game. So the panic wasn't there. You knew that there was still plenty of time left, there was plenty of ball game to be played even at the end of the third quarter, but it did. The more time went on, you could feel that shift in momentum, and it felt as though that everything was just it seemed to be coming back to the Chiefs. The defense kind of they picked up. They started to deal with deal with Jalen Hurts' run ability. They started dealing with stopping the likes of Brown and Smith. It seemed as though that they were leading the way almost and saying, look, we're doing our bit. Over to you guys, kind of as a squad, as a team, don't let us down. It's your turn, go out there and take it back, kind of thing. We've kept them off the field, now you go and get it. And you could kind of see that. And a friend of mine was watching it with me as well, and you just felt that there was much more to cheer about in the second half. There was much more of that kind of off the edge of your sofa, kind of like willing the team on, and you could feel the crowd, you could hear the crowd starting to overpower and kind of out sing the Eagles fans as well. You could hear the war chant, more and more often. So you did feel like there was a change, and you could feel that it was palpable to me. You could feel it, and certainly it looked like that, and it just to go touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. Just every time you got the ball, seemed like everything was going right. And the fact that you touched on before, he wasn't just looking at Kelsey. I think the Eagles were probably going to expect that a wounded Mahomes was going to look for his safety blanket in Kelsey, and he didn't. That's not what he did. He brought in the likes of, it's nice to see Sky Moore, a rookie, picking up a touchdown. Like you said, Isaiah Pacheco picked up a touchdown, another rookie. Not a rookie, but certainly to the Chiefs, Kadarius Toney picking up a touchdown. How he was as wide open as he was, the motion and the communication in the Eagles defense, it must have been havoc for them because he was so wide open on that one. So it was good to see him pick a touchdown up, and of course Kelsey's got to get his as well. So it was brilliant. It had everything for me.
I thought what has been fascinating since is the fact that they've come out and they've talked about how the enemy went through on Friday night that piece that they had noticed that when you go to jet motion or jet sweep, and basically the Eagles sell out completely. And then if you don't complete it, if you turn, then you've got a man free. And of course, it was Andy Reid's disciple, Dougie P, who had run just that play. And we talk about this league being a copycat league all the time. But I'm wondering, Chris, like, in terms of, it seemed to me like what you said earlier in terms of that too high and what you give up to Kelsey, and in terms of Mahomes' running ability throughout the game. I'm wondering, like, and this is, I'm speculating, I'm just interested in your opinion. To me, it seems like the Raiders, was it last year, almost came up with the best that I have seen plan in terms of dealing with Mahomes, which is quite something given that it was the Raiders. But in terms of, they just sat the spy in there for the entirety of the game, which allowed them to deal a little bit with Kelsey and ensured that, because he's so good. I mean, the issue with Mahomes is he can hit you over the top, he can hit Kelsey, or he can take off. But in terms of, like, where have you seen, because let's face it, this Eagles defense, particularly in the second half, Mahomes, I think he averaged basically Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes turned the best defense in the league into the worst in that second half. They could do whatever they want. I'm just wondering, in terms of from what you've seen from a Chiefs fan, how do teams go about trying to slow down Patrick Mahomes? Because we know Andy Reid is coming back next year now.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's tough because you don't just have to stop Patrick Mahomes. You've got that element of it. That's a big part of it. But you've also got to stop the playmaking abilities and kind of the script design of the offensive genius that is Andy Reid. It doesn't matter. You could have, in some players, I'm not saying all players, but in some players, you could have a quarterback who's not Patrick Mahomes, and it would still look like a great play because it's actually come from Andy Reid's play design. We're just spoiled at the fact that Patrick Mahomes can make those things happen, but if it doesn't go according to script, his improvisation skills are like nobody else's, and he always just finds ways to get people open. You know, he throws receivers open. He's got a good scrambler. He gets the ball to whoever he wants, whenever he wants. So, how you stop him, I don't know. I think I personally, I feel as though that the too high safety issue isn't something that, I don't think teams should be doing that. I don't think that's what they should be best doing. I think now, at the time when that deep threat to the likes of Tyreek Hill was there, you kind of always had to bracket in with the kind of too high safeties. Otherwise, you could be burned big style. And I think last year we saw that was the Buccaneers. I think it was in the first quarter. It was something like 200 yards alone, receiving by Hill. And teams cottoned on and thought, look, we've got to take away this deep threat. So we'll leave two high safeties. Now that Hill's gone, you leave the two high safeties, then you've got so many people in the box. You know, the defensive line, you've got to at least have 5 people. Plus, you want to probably drop down. You've got a couple of cornerbacks. You've got that intermediate kind of yardage there to be gained, which is where whatever you take away, some of it from a deep threat like Tyreek Hill, it's then playing at the hands of a Travis Kelce, who, if you're going to play too high, I'll just hit the seam and you'll find me 15 yards, and we'll take that every single time. Now we've got that threat that we're being able to hand the ball off, dump the ball to Pacheco, and he keeps churning his feet and gaining the hard yardage. So there's so many options at our disposal that I think the two high safeties for me now is a mistake. I think what you need to do is bring more into kind of the kind of slot and kind of box safety kind of area. Start looking at defending the intermediate yardage. And if you get beat over the top sometimes, your only real threat, as opposed to being beaten over the top at the moment by the Chiefs, is I would say is by the likes of MVS. You know, if you've got playing a box safety, if you've got somebody that's quick enough, they can drop into coverage, just kind of that deep safety. But personally, I don't know why more teams don't do that. I think you've got to deal with Kelce now. He's the main threat in terms of the receiving threat. Playing two high safeties is just, it's pointless. You're not going to be coming in contact with him if you're playing too deep. He's in the intermediate areas. It's not dealing with that threat. So I think for me, I'd be doing that more. I should give Patrick Mahomes that area that he likes to go to. Kelce in the intermediate, it's not there anymore. What are you going to do then? You know, we've got sideline to sideline linebackers. We stop the scramble drills. We take away the intermediate yardage to Kelce. All you've got is over the top. You get somebody open and you find him, fair play to you. But the percentage game for me is taking away the intermediate yardage to Kelce. So Interesting. Don't anybody kind of start using that though. Don't start trying it and thinking, oh, we've got that Durham Chief UK to blame for the fact that the demise of Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid taking away Kelsey's yards.
Oh my God, I'm laughing already. Let's touch on our magical part, which is the officiating, because wow, this game was definitely like every other game we've had this season, where there was a lot of questionable officiating being there. Obviously, we've spoken about this a number of times within the actual show itself, but you know, the high note and the most important part, which led to your win, was Bradbury's holding call, which totally divided social media and still today is dividing it. I was quite excited thinking we were going to go to overtime, and then this call happened. I kind of felt like the refs didn't want to get paid extra, or Goodell just said no more. And you could see it as well in the people in the stadium. You know, what was your thoughts on it, Chris, as you watched it from home? Because for me, I was just gobsmacked.
Well, like every fan, your initial reaction is always one of kind of you gravitate to defending your own team or your own players. And first off, for me, my kind of initial call straight away was that's holding. You know, that's it's DPI. It's got to be called. Then you kind of, I suppose, you stop and evaluate things a little bit more. It's more kind of you think a bit more about it. It's more you try to rationalize it. Looking at it, it looked like it didn't really. It's not like he spun him around. You know, he grabbed his jersey. It's not like he's not changed, spun him around, and he's completely missed his on his route. You've got a guy. He's took his shirt a little bit. It's not stopped him really. He's not changed the trajectory of where he was going. It looked soft. So it's one of those ones to me. Looking back on it, that I can understand people's gripes. If you think that it was soft and shouldn't have been given, I get that. Given that just before the show started, we were saying that you've set yourself a precedent of how you're going to officiate the game, Carl Sheffers, and he's then kind of changed that at the last minute. He's kind of been going one way, and then he's all of a sudden just taking a bit of a detour in the last couple of minutes. It's one of those that if it was one of the Chiefs' defensive backs that had given that away, I'd probably be saying that's a bit soft. That I don't think it's really kind of holding, but it's one of those ones on offense where you'd say, oh yeah, that's holding. You know, if it's your team, it's holding. If it's against your team, it's not holding. See it so many times, you know, on kind of football, soccer, however you want to say it. It's that's a penalty, and you know, if it's against your team, you're saying that's never a penalty. There's no way that shouldn't have been given. So I kind of felt a bit like that about it. But one thing I can't argue with and I can't take away is that James Bradbury, held his hands up and said, yeah, I held him. I was hoping they weren't going to throw it. They were going to give it away. Let me get away with it, but it didn't happen. But yeah, they still can't get away from the fact that last minute Sheff has changed his way of what he let go. All of a sudden, he didn't let it go. But for anybody that says that the Chiefs allowed or that we're handed the game by the officials and that the official allows us to let that Carl Sheffers is not a liked man in the Chiefs' kingdom because of the fact that there's been so many questionable calls gone against us. That man would never ever wouldn't be wearing red. It wouldn't be wearing red. He's not really. He's never been a kind of all for the Chiefs. It certainly didn't look like it this season either. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't buy into any nonsense around it being rigged or favored as such. I just think pressure gets to players, pressure gets to officials, and what you have, and you've seen it 2 years in a row now. I think it's Chris, you're right. Like it is, and Bradbury said it. Like it is holding, and so they can. But the issue is they didn't. They let it go. I mean, there was one earlier in the game where Bradbury did. I think probably an even more egregious kind of DPI on Juju and got away with it. I think that probably led him to think that that's how the rest were reffing it. So the issue, I think, is consistency.
Yeah.
I think that's something. It probably was also highlighted by the fact that there have been a number of instances over the course of the season with a number of teams, and the commissioner comes out and says that officiating is the best it has ever been. Though I will say I did see a piece from Mike Sando where he was at a Super Bowl 24 years ago, and the then commissioner said exactly the same thing. Officiating is the best it has ever been. So time truly is a flat circle. Take us through then to, you know, what it means as a Chiefs fan to see you know, this team lift the Lombardi again. Andy Reid gets a second championship. Patrick Mahomes gets a second championship. And you know, the dynasty talk grows ever louder.
It does. It does. I think it's one of those situations where everybody, as a Chiefs fan, we can see the greatness of Patrick Mahomes. I mean, not just necessarily as a Chiefs fan, everybody can see the greatness of Patrick Mahomes as a player. Everybody knows what a great head coach Andy Reid is and has been with both the Eagles and the Chiefs. Everybody knows, you know, that it's almost a golden age of Chiefs football at the moment. But the one thing that always kind of everybody's pulled back to is kind of achievements. You know, whether that silverware, you know, how many MVPs has he won? How many times has he won the Super Bowl? You know, how many rings has he got? You know, it's going to go back to that being compared to Tom Brady and his kind of 7 rings that he's got on his fingers, and, you know, the greatest of all time. And it's almost as though for some people you can't have that conversation of somebody being the greatest of all time or one of the greatest of all time unless they have one more tick in the box than somebody else who's got more than them, which is ludicrous to me because it isn't achievements personally that I think tells the full story. Yes, it helps, and it's great for us as Chiefs fans that talent isn't wasted and that it's rewarding for the players and for the coaching staff. And for those guys, they would do it day in, day out. They love it every single day. They love playing football. That's what they do. But for them, they'll have grown up with dreams of winning the Super Bowl, hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. If it doesn't happen, a lot of those guys are probably going to feel it's for naught. They're going to want that to happen. And for it to happen twice it's great for them. It's great for us as fans. It's great to be kind of recognised as a Super Bowl winner for the second time in a few years. I saw a tweet today where I thought, well, if this hadn't have happened and we hadn't won the Super Bowl this time, would somebody have even tweeted this, or would they have still tweeted it and it would look a little bit different? AFC West Championships, Chiefs 3, Raiders 3, Broncos 3, Chargers 0. Now, would somebody have tweeted that had we not won? Because it would have looked like 3, 3, and 2 for the Chiefs and none for the Chargers. Or would they actually have tweeted it still? I don't know. I'm not sure that they would, but it just goes to show the mindset of some people do want to see that at the end game, that if you've got the Super Bowl and you've lost, it doesn't matter. You know, that it's almost as though your season's achievements of getting there are for nothing. So it shouldn't be, but it seems to be that it's almost like the money talk situation. Trophies talk, Lombardies talk. And if it helps for those guys to be discussed in some of the greatest of all time conversations and being fantastic at what they do, great, good for them. They shouldn't need to be, but it helps.
Yeah, it is. It does seem, I would concur with you. It seems completely silly to focus only on the rings, the success that the people have. And there was a clip that went viral, I think maybe just after Brady's retirement, where and then because the headline on it was the guy was saying that he felt Montana was the best at that time, was the best Super Bowl QB, Manning was the best regular season QB, and that Tom Brady was the greatest winner. And not that Brady was a top QB, but he felt Manning changed the sport, the way in which a QB operates, the way in which the QB was kind of the OC on the field, which you see Patrick Mahomes doing as well. And also for Joe Montana, the fact that Montana never threw an interception in a Super Bowl. And I think that would probably be a more interesting discussion rather than kind of just counting up rings. And I mean, if you were to look at Andy Reid's impact on the game and look at Andy Reid's coaching tree and look at like the way in which he has impacted again and again and again. Yeah, I think it's far too basic to just break it down. And I mean, I think also the fact that we saw Jalen Hurts have the best game of his young career, and I'm a big fan of Jalen Hurts, and the fact that Patrick Mahomes took time out again, afterwards to specifically call out Jalen Hurts and his performance. But maybe, Chris, before we wrap this up, because one of the things that Andy Reid said, and he did acknowledge that, you know, not go into detail, but that he does now have grandkids. He is getting older, but he is definitely back for next year. Patrick seemed quite pleased about that, obviously, but you know, talked about the way in which he said, again, probably kind of harking back to what we were just talking about, it wasn't just that Andy Reid is a great football coach, it's the fact that he makes players better people. That's something kind of Patrick called out. And you touched on Andy Reid's genius as a play caller, but as a Chiefs fan, how nice is it that he will be back again next season? Because let me tell you, as a Broncos fan, that's not good news.
No, it won't be good news for you. No, I understand that. But to me, it's as though it's the kind of the glue that kind of holds everything together. Everybody knows that whether it's a workplace, whether it's some kind of sports club that you go to, wherever, whatever it is, there's always somebody that generally you know is kind of the glue that keeps everybody together, and who kind of they seem to be that calm head. They have got words of wisdom whenever you need them. So it just so happens that Andy Reid has got everything he needs in terms of that kind of genius of play calling. He's got a great footballing brain, but actually he seems as though that kind of, as a mentor and as a kind of a life coach, he is up there with the best of them as well. The people that he's developed, the players he's developed, some people have come in as, I mean, look at some of the rookies over the last so many years that we've taken on, and that you know, Kelsey wasn't a first, second round pick. You know, you've got Trey Smith was taken late on. Isaiah Pacheco this year was a 7th round pick, and don't forget about Brett Veach and all of that. But you're taking what industry insiders, I guess, and scouts and analysts are saying are people who aren't likely to be kind of day one starters or impact football players. And Andy Reid, the way that he takes those guys and the ability he's got to kind of bring the best out of them. Yeah, they've got to have it in them in the first place, but for him to tap into that potential, get it out, and actually find that it becomes something much more than it was ever expected to be, it's absolutely fantastic. It's testament to him, and I think it just goes to show how good a coach he is. And so, yeah, not just a tactical genius, but he just knows how to get the best out of people. And I think you're hard pushed to see anybody around Andy Reid that isn't smiling. I think it goes to show how highly that the guys in the locker room think of him. You see little things like he gets involved in the adverts, the commercials with and State Farm commercials. Other insurers or whatever they are available, but there's he's also, I mean, birthday cakes, things like that. Just the little kind of the jokey side to him. He's a person as well. He's not just a coach. And I think it speaks volumes. He's always got a smile on his face. I can't say I've ever seen that of Bill Belichick, but each to their own.
It's a very rare day when my Bill smiles, and I'm not holding it against him. So I'm not holding it against him. But I have to say, Andy Reid really is. He's one of those, if I could give a coach an award for his mentoring, especially of players, I would definitely give it to him. There's no way any other coach could get away with being on an off season, drinking beer and eating a load of cheeseburgers. No way. I'm actually amazed that the nutritionist that actually works with the Chiefs is able to even get him to have a Nutri-Grain bar in a normal day. But Chris, thank you so much for joining us. It was really good to catch up with you, and enjoy the off season. Enjoy having your Lombardi, and we will see you guys early next year again.
Thank you for having me.